here in Washington, also the site of the National Governors Association's winter meeting, which begins today. The organization, which prioritizes bipartisanship, will be meeting over the next 2 days to discuss national issues, including education, reforms to the country's permitting process, and public health and disaster response. Let's now bring in the chair of the National Governors Association, Democratic Governor Jerry Polis of Colorado, and the organization's vice chair, Republican Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. Our thanks to you both, Mr. Governor, for being here this morning. Let's just start with, I think, what grabbed all of us here. There are so things right now that are rare, that are bipartisan. So talk to us about how you guys are getting along.
Yeah. And
I was going to say, we don't see this too often. Republican Democrats sitting next to each other, smiling even. Talk to us about why that's so important, both of you. You first.
Yeah, well, first off, governors have a unique perspective that, we share the common purpose to make sure we have the best education system, infrastructure, healthcare system in our states, the best economy. So governors can we have to get things done, and we have a unique perspective on how to do it. So really, we work in a bipartisan method to really what are the best ideas for educating our kids, and that's Governor Polis's initiative this year in the National Governors Association. And so we have a great relationship and work really well together.
And it's, it is nice to share some good news every now and then. But the good news is the states balance their budgets. We have balanced budgets. It's a requirement in nearly every state. We do that every year. We really upping the bar on how we can better prepare young people for the workforce. So expanding apprenticeships, earn while you learn models, dual and concurrent enrollment in all of our states. We have a lot of kids that are right in high school, getting a skill or certificate, even a full associate's degree at no cost to their family. And if they aren't going on to a four-year college, being able to enter the workforce right away and earn a good living. So these are the good things happening every day that governors on both sides of the aisle are working on across the country.
So you have set up in Oklahoma, and it's part of the reason you're meeting, is this Let's Get Ready education initiative. And one of the things you want to look at is harnessing technology to improve learning for students. The Democrats, fairly or unfairly, have often had a reputation as being a party that's kind of opposed to letting cutting-edge technology into places like education and healthcare. How are you countering that reputation, and is AI?
Well, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that reputation. I'm a tech guy, so that kind of hits close to home.
You.
I'm very pro-tech, forward-looking. I mean, there's certainly, I'm sure, people on both sides of the aisle that want to preserve the status quo for the sake of the status quo. That's not what we're about. We're about, just as you would in business, if you have a new technology, saying how can this create better outcomes. So you're prepared
to disrupt the status quo, even if it annoys some of your constituents?
The status quo is failing too many kids across Colorado and across the country. In Colorado, and I don't think any state, sadly, is an exception to this, we have entire schools where 70, 80% of the kids are not reading or doing math at grade level. That is inexcusable, and we need to change that. We need to have the moral fortitude to expand and replicate what works, but also to change what isn't working for kids and for families.
So, Governor Stitt, you've renamed a section of highway in Oklahoma the Donald J. Trump Highway. You've proposed a day off, or a national day, is it? November the 5th is Donald J. Trump Day. You're clearly, anyway, a supporter of the president is what I'm trying to say. But you're also very focused in your state on efficiency, and you've set up a government efficiency commission. So what do you make of the way, and it's not at a state level, it is a national level, so it is different. What do you make of the way that Elon Musk is trying to do for the country, what it seems like you're trying to do for your state?
Yeah, well, first off, I applaud what Elon Musk and the president's trying to do with look at efficiency across the national budget. From the state perspective, I set up Oklahoma DOGE because about 40% of our money comes from the federal government. So if they're going to cut the money to the states need to have input into that. So my purpose for Oklahoma DOGE was to say, hey, Mr. President, if we're going to take a 10% cut in federal dollars, here's how we can do it without messing with core services in the state of Oklahoma. Then you encourage all the other states to use that same kind of method, because the federal dollars might need to be spent a certain way in Oklahoma and a different way in Colorado or California. So the states want to have a input there. But the big picture here is I think the American people understand that the federal government is spending too much money. we, as Governor Polis said, have balanced budgets in our state. We need to look at the spending that we're doing nationally. $2 trillion in excess spending is not sustainable over the long term. And so I applaud the fact that they're looking at all of these spending across the world.
So I don't think anyone argues that that's not a good idea. It's how it's being done that I think is very questionable, controversial, and potentially dangerous. We have people being fired and rehired, in a mad rush because they didn't even know what essential services they provided. So I'm curious, first of all, how DOGE might have impacted any services that your states are trying to give to people. Maybe I'll start in Colorado.
Well, I think that's another benefit of why the governors are here. Look, I think most governors would agree, I certainly would, that, for instance, FEMA, emergency management, has many issues. The federal government should do better. They should restructure it.
No one's arguing.
But the wrecking ball approach might not be the most efficient way to get a better outcome for less money. I think that's the goal of the Trump administration. It's certainly my goal, too. Better outcome, less money. So, leaving it alone and all the inefficiencies it has is not a good answer. Sometimes the wrecking ball could make it worse, could make it better. But we as governors want to say, hey, here's what we need in an emergency. When there's a major fire in our state, when there's an earthquake, if there's a tornado, if there's a hurricane, here's what we kind of need the federal government to do. Very often that might take the form of, yes, less resources and more flexibility for states and governors to be able to deploy these resources rather than sometimes what it feels like, which is putting a square peg in a round hole with some of these federal programs.
What about tariffs? The tariffs affecting your state?
I think tariffs are devastating. They're in many ways the most devastating part of President Trump's agenda. I still hold out hope that this is a negotiating ploy and that we'll wind up with less tariffs on imports and exports. He's mentioned reciprocity. Colorado's economy is heavily import and exports based. Our biggest exports are the ag, beef, grain. And this is going to be devastating for us. Bad for consumers, raising prices. Bad for manufacturing because many of our manufacturing has parts and components from around the world. So I still hold that hope. And of course, we'll encourage the president to find an off-ramp here and decrease trade barriers for growing in America and made in America products.
So Governor said, obviously the whole purpose of this meeting is to stress bipartisanship, but the tone from the White House often is not in that way. President Trump is deeply critical of Democrats, frequently has deemed them enemies of the state at times. What would you like to see him take a different approach to lead to more, perhaps, bipartisan solutions?
Well, the former chair, Governor Cox of Utah, he had his initiative called Disagree Better. And so I think Americans are wanting someone to lead. And so I could disagree with him a little bit on the tariff side. But we can do it in a bipartisan, friendly debate, right? Isn't that what our country is about? Is like, what are the best ideas and how can we argue and how can we come up with the best solutions? And so, but it's hard when you lead. There's always people, complaining and attacking. And so I know that it's tough whether you're a governor or I can't even imagine as president of the United States as he's trying to make decisions and he's trying to get a balanced budget. Sometimes that's messy and you're having to make decisions. But my question to people, if you think about it, we don't borrow money to donate to a charity at the end of the year. But right now, we're borrowing $2 trillion to do all this humanitarian work around the world. And I'm not saying it's not important, but Congress has got to balance the budget. We have got to get our spending under control.
0.4%
the key
of the
point
budget.
Is Congress.
I mean, you know that, don't you? You know that the USAID budget is a tiny amount of money.
But if
you're going to balance the budget, you need to attack things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, right? To have a real impact on America's spending, it's not going to be on the USAID budget.
I'm a businessman. If it's more than a ham sandwich, we're going to look at it. And so
looking at it is great.
When you think about billions of dollars, I think most Oklahomans are like, yeah, that's wasteful. Let's spend it on U.S. citizens. Let's spend it on infrastructure here.
Do you know?
Well, if we're borrowing money to spend it in Burma and around the world on certain initiatives, isn't that the president's job? Doesn't he get the right
to look at it?
But also to say, hey,
Congress make decisions.
But he's also the executive branch, and we elect a president. And if you can't be the executive of the executive branch, what type of government do we have, right?
Look, I would say
bureaucracy.
States have balanced budgets, and I support, and I did when I was in Congress as well, a balanced budget amendment to the federal Constitution because Congress should be forced to make these choices on these trade-offs.
Yes,
yeah, makes sense, right?
Congress should make these choices 100%.
Right.
But right now they haven't even passed. How long has it been since Congress has done a a budget.
They don't often do it. Yeah, they have to. They agree on the spending plan is what they generally agree on. And again, everything should be on the table. I applaud the goal of reducing or eliminating the deficit. I hope that they can accomplish that. But that will force hard choices, right? And we're here to say, look, there are times where you can do more with less, and those are opportunities for this administration to have more flexibility for the states, often with less money than they were spending already, and we can get more done. An emergency response is a great example of that.
That's a great point, because the states, if you think about it, we're the ones that are building schools, educating our children, building roads. So all the federal bureaucracy and the federal spending, we are proposing block grants, and we could get a lot of efficiencies by giving that more discretionary spending to the state level to actually meet the needs of Oklahomans and Coloradans and Texans and Californians.
All right. Democratic Governor Jared Polis of Colorado and Republican Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. Thank you both so much for coming on, and enjoy the conference today. Thank you.